Welcome to Story Tales. Please like this video and subscribe to Story Tales. I hope you enjoy the story. Let's begin. Nathan Kellier stood in the doorway of their master bedroom, watching his wife Clarice throw clothes into suitcases with the same frantic energy she brought to everything that mattered to her. The annual pilgrimage to Myrtle Beach was upon them again, and the familiar knot in his stomach tightened. "Jocelyn, did you pack your good sandals?" Clarice called down the hall, not bothering to look at Nathan as she folded another sundress. "The white ones, not those ratty flip-flops." "Yes, Mom." Jocelyn's voice carried the tired tone of someone who'd answered this question 3 times already. Nathan bent to lift the largest suitcase, feeling the strain in his back. 41 years of metalwork had left their mark, but he never complained. He carried the bag downstairs where Greta Durnell waited by the front door like a general inspecting troops. "Careful with that one," Greta said, not looking up from her phone. "My medication is in there." Nathan set the bag down gently. At 66, Greta still carried herself like the beauty queen she'd been decades ago, though now her perfection felt sharp and cold. She studied him over her reading glasses. "You know, we barely fit 6 people in that beach house," she said, her voice carrying that particular tone she used when she wanted to cut deep. "Maybe if someone brought more than steel-toe boots to the table, we have 2 houses by now." Clarice appeared at the top of the stairs with another bag. She paused, and Nathan saw the small smile that crossed her face before she caught herself. But she didn't defend him. She never did anymore. "Mom, don't start," Clarice said, but there was no heat in it. More like a request to wait until he wasn't in the room. Jocelyn emerged from the kitchen carrying a cooler, her 16-year-old face tight with embarrassment. She glanced at Nathan, then quickly away. Levi appeared behind her, 14 and quiet, his eyes fixed on the floor. "Dad, want me to load the car?" Jocelyn asked. "I got it," Nathan said. He took the cooler from her hands and headed outside. The June heat hit him as he opened the trunk of Clarice's SUV. 6 people, 5 suitcases, 1 cooler, 0 room for him. As usual, he arranged everything carefully, the way he approached all his work with patience and precision. "Nathan," Greta had followed him outside. "You understand why this arrangement works better, don't you?" He straightened up, meeting her eyes. "Enlighten me. The beach house has 3 bedrooms. Clarice and I share the master. The kids get their own rooms. You'd be on the couch, and frankly, after working all day in that shop, you need your own bed, right? Besides, someone needs to watch the house here. And your shop." Nathan nodded. The same logic every year. The same careful exclusion wrapped up as practicality. Clarice came out with her purse and keys. "We'll call when we get there," she said, giving him a quick kiss on the cheek that felt more like habit than affection. "Drive safe." Levi approached last, carrying his backpack. He looked like he wanted to say something, but Greta was watching. "See you next week, Dad," he said quietly. "See you." Nathan stood in the driveway as they pulled away. Clarice honked twice, their old signal from when they were dating. He didn't wave back. The house felt different when they were gone. Quieter, but also somehow lighter. Nathan walked through the rooms, noting things he never had time to see when the noise of daily life filled the space. The family photos on the mantel showed a progression. He hadn't noticed him appearing less and less in recent pictures, like he was slowly being edited out of his own life. He made himself a simple dinner: grilled chicken, steamed vegetables, a beer from the back of the refrigerator where he kept the good ones. Clarice preferred wine, and Greta acted like beer was something only construction workers drank, which, Nathan supposed, made her point for her. After dinner, he walked out to his shop. The metal fabrication business he'd built from nothing occupied a converted garage behind the house. 20 years of sweat and skill had created something solid, a reputation for quality work, steady income, and the kind of pride that came from making things with his hands. But tonight, he went to the far corner where his workbench met the wall. Pinned there, yellowed with age, was a blueprint he hadn't looked at in 5 years. The paper was covered with pencil marks, measurements, and notes in his careful handwriting. At the top, in faded ink, Hollow Pine Lodge, a place worth staying. He'd drawn it during one of those family vacations where he'd been left behind. A resort on the lake, designed for families who actually wanted to be together. Cabins with enough space for everyone. A main lodge with a kitchen where people could cook together instead of eating out every meal. A dock where kids could fish with their fathers. The sound of tires on gravel pulled him from his thoughts. Frankie Chavez climbed out of his catering van, grinning the way he'd been grinning since they were 12 years old. "Thought I might find you out here," Frankie said. "Let me guess they left you behind again." "They don't leave me behind." Nathan folded the blueprint and slid it into a drawer. "They just take who they think matters." Frankie studied him for a moment. At 42, Frankie had the kind of easy confidence that came from being comfortable in his own skin. His catering business in Asheville was thriving, and his marriage to Maribel was the kind Nathan remembered having once. "You still looking at that lodge plan?" "Just cleaning up." "Bullshit." Frankie pulled 2 beers from the van's cooler and handed one to Nathan. "I drove 30 minutes to talk to you about something, and finding you mooning over that blueprint is perfect timing." Nathan cracked open the beer. "I'm listening." "There's land for sale on Lake Juniper. 12 acres with lakefront. The owner wants to sell fast. His wife got transferred to Atlanta." "Good for him. I'm thinking about buying it. Not for catering, for something bigger. A small resort. Maybe family-oriented, local food, real craftsmanship." Frankie paused. "I need a partner who knows how to build things that last." Nathan took a long drink of beer. "How much?" "Total investment? About $300,000 to buy the land and get started. I can put up $200 if you can handle the rest." "That's a lot of money. It's a lot of opportunity. Question is, you tired of watching your kids grow up through pictures they text you from the beach?" Nathan didn't answer right away. The shop around them was filled with half-finished projects, custom work for people who valued what he could do with his hands. But all of it felt small suddenly, like he'd been thinking too small for too long. "What's the timeline?" "Land will be gone by the end of the month if we don't move." "But Nathan, I'm not talking about just business here. I'm talking about building something that says who you are instead of what other people think you should be." Nathan looked toward the house. Dark except for the porch light Clarice always left on. Tomorrow she'd call from the beach, probably put Greta on the phone to tell him about some restaurant they'd found or some shop Jocelyn had loved. They'd sound happy. They'd sound complete. "Let me think about it." "Don't think too long," Frankie said. "Sometimes the best decisions are the ones that scare you most." After Frankie left, Nathan sat in his shop until well past midnight, the blueprint spread on his workbench. He'd drawn it during a week when his family was in Myrtle Beach without him, sketching by lamplight while the house echoed with his absence. Every line represented something he wanted: respect, inclusion, a place where he belonged. He'd never shown it to Clarice. Somehow, he'd known what she would say. Nathan met Clarice when she was 19 and he was 21, both of them young enough to believe that love could bridge any gap. She'd been crowned Miss Apple Festival 2 years running, with the kind of blonde beauty that made men forget how to form sentences. He'd been working construction during the day and taking welding classes at night, building towards something he couldn't yet name, but knew he wanted. Their first date was a disaster. He'd taken her to a steakhouse that was too expensive for his budget, and she'd ordered the most expensive thing on the menu without looking at the prices. When the bill came, he'd had to excuse himself to check his wallet twice. But she'd waited, and when he came back, she'd smiled like none of it mattered. "My grandmother always said a man who's willing to work for what he wants is worth more than a man who has everything handed to him." She'd said he believed her. They married 6 months later in a small ceremony that Greta had complained about for the planning stages through the reception. "Clarice could have had anyone," she told Nathan the night before the wedding. "You know that, don't you?" "I know I'm lucky," he'd said. Lucky isn't enough for a lifetime, but in those early years, it had felt like enough. Nathan worked 2 jobs to put Clarice through college. She studied business, talked about opening her own boutique someday, painted their small apartment in bright colors that made everything feel possible. When Jocelyn was born, Clarice had cried holding her, whispering about all the things they'd give their daughter that they'd never had themselves. The change happened slowly, so gradually Nathan couldn't pinpoint when respect had become tolerance, when tolerance had become embarrassment. Greta had moved to town when Levi was born to help with the babies, and somehow never left. Her small criticisms became daily observations. Her suggestions became commands. Nathan, you really should dress better when we go out. Became Nathan, you can't wear that at church. Became Nathan, maybe you should wait in the car. Clarice started shopping at different stores, wearing clothes that cost more than Nathan made in a week. She joined the country club, took tennis lessons, spent afternoons with women who'd never worked a day in their lives but spoke about charity work like it was a career. We're building something, she'd tell him when he questioned the expenses. Image matters. Building what? A better life. For the kids. But Nathan noticed that better always seemed to mean without him. School plays where he sat alone because Clarice and Greta preferred to mingle with other families. Birthday parties where he dropped the kids off but wasn't invited to stay. Family photos where he stood slightly apart, like an afterthought. The breaking point came on a Saturday morning when Levi was 8 and Jocelyn was 10. Nathan had been planning to teach Levi how to change the oil in the truck, something his own father had taught him at the same age. But Clarice had made other plans. Levi's going to tennis lessons with Jocelyn, she'd announced. Mrs. Patterson says it's important for children to have proper recreational activities. What's improper about learning to work on cars? Greta had looked up from her coffee with that smile that wasn't really a smile. Clarice, you don't marry a welder. You hire one. The words had hung in the air like smoke. Clarice had laughed, a sound that was supposed to dismiss the comment as harmless. But her eyes had been calculating, like she was seeing Nathan through her mother's lens for the first time and finding the view lacking. Mom's just being dramatic, she'd said later, when Nathan had confronted her. You know how she is. But the damage was done. Nathan saw it in the way Clarice introduced him at social events. My husband, Nathan. He has his own business, leaving out that the business was metalwork. He saw it in the way she scheduled family activities when he was working, then acted surprised when he couldn't attend. He saw it in the way his children began to hesitate before hugging him in public, as if they'd learned that associating with him came with social costs. He'd said nothing, absorbed every slight, every dismissal, every casual cruelty, telling himself it would pass. That the woman who'd married him still existed somewhere under the layers of aspiration and embarrassment. But that was the thing about erosion. It happened so slowly you didn't notice until the foundation gave way. Nathan called Frankie 3 days after his family returned from Myrtle Beach. The trip stories had been enthusiastic restaurants, shopping, miniature golf, everything that made a perfect family vacation. Everything except missing him. I'm in, Nathan said without preamble when Frankie answered. Just like that. Just like that. The paperwork moved fast. Nathan liquidated his savings account, took out a loan against his shop, and mortgaged every piece of security he'd built over 20 years. Clarice signed the papers without reading them, too distracted by planning Jocelyn's junior year schedule to notice her husband was betting their future on 12 acres of lakefront dreams. Lake Juniper sat 20 minutes outside Shelter Rock, far enough from town to feel private, but close enough for day trips. The land had been neglected, overgrown trails, a falling-down dock, an old cabin that would need to be torn down and rebuilt. But Nathan saw potential in the bones of the place. We'll start with 3 family cabins, he told Frankie as they walked the property line. Each one with a kitchen, living area, 2 bedrooms, and a deck facing the water. Nothing fancy, but everything done right. What about the main lodge? Nathan pointed to a clearing 50 yards back from the water. There, big enough for a dining area, commercial kitchen, game room for kids, stone fireplace, maybe space for small events, anniversaries, family reunions. You've been thinking about this for a while. 5 years. They broke ground in September. Nathan worked his regular shop hours during the day, then drove to Lake Juniper every evening and weekend. The physical labor felt different than his metalwork, less precise, but more creative, like he was building something that mattered instead of just something that met specifications. Frankie brought Maribel to see the progress after the first month. She was a small woman with dark hair and laugh lines around her eyes, the kind of person who made everyone feel welcome within minutes of meeting her. This is going to be beautiful, she said, standing where the main lodge would rise. Families are going to love this place. Hope so. No, I mean it. Look at this view. Feel this peace. People are going to come here and remember what it feels like to actually spend time together. She brought them dinner after that homemade tamales, fresh salsa, Mexican beer that tasted better than anything Nathan had ever bought at the store. They sat on milk crates around a folding table as the sun set over the lake, planning the details that would make Hollow Pines special. Local suppliers for everything we can, Frankie said. Food, furniture, even the linens. People want authentic experiences, not some corporate resort that could be anywhere. Agreed. What about activities? Fishing, obviously. Kayaks, maybe paddleboards. Hiking trails through the woods. Maribel paused. What about teaching workshops? Like, you could teach metalworking, Frankie could do cooking classes. Nathan felt something shift in his chest. People would want to learn that. Are you kidding? City people love that stuff. Hands-on. Make something real experiences. Especially fathers with kids, they want to teach their children skills that matter. Nathan looked across the lake where the last light was fading behind the trees. He thought about Levi, about all the things he'd wanted to teach his son, but had been told weren't important. About Jocelyn, who used to love helping him in the shop before someone convinced her it wasn't appropriate for a young lady. We'll need insurance for workshops. Liability coverage. Already looked into it. It's doable. Reese Harmon started helping with the electrical work in October. Nathan had known Reese for 15 years. They'd worked construction together before Nathan started his shop. Reese had gone through his own bitter divorce 3 years earlier, losing his house and half his business to a woman who decided she deserved better. You sure about this place? Reese asked one evening as they ran wire through the walls of the first cabin. Sure about what? Building something this nice when your wife thinks you're not good enough for the family beach trip. Nathan tested a connection before answering. Maybe I'm not building it for her. Fair enough. Just saying, when my ex figured out I was doing well again, suddenly she remembered all my good qualities. Women like Clarice, they come back around when it benefits them. Clarice isn't coming back from anywhere. We're still married, right? But you know what I mean. Nathan didn't know. But he made his choice when he signed the loan papers. Whatever happened with Clarice, he was building something that belonged to him. The first cabin was finished by Thanksgiving. Nathan walked through it alone on a cold Saturday morning, checking every detail. Solid oak floors, stone fireplace, kitchen island big enough for a family to cook together. Master bedroom with a view of the lake. Second bedroom perfect for kids. That IT was everything he dreamed of building. Everything his own family had never thought they needed. His phone buzzed with a text from Clarice. At Mom's for dinner planning Christmas party. Be home late. Nathan typed back. Okay. Then he deleted the message and typed. Working late at the lodge. He hit send and turned off his phone. Christmas morning had always been Nathan's favorite time of year, back when the kids were small and the magic of it mattered more than the cost of it. But as Jocelyn and Levi grew older, the day had become more performance than celebration, an elaborate production stage for Greta's approval and Clarice's social media. Nathan had worked late into the night finishing Levi's gift. His son had mentioned wanting a place to display his guitar, and Nathan had designed something special, a handcrafted wooden rack that could hold 3 instruments, with small shelves for picks and music books. He'd used walnut from a tree that had fallen on their property years ago, sanding it smooth and finishing it with the kind of attention he brought to his finest metalwork. The family gathered in the living room at 8 o'clock sharp, Greta's schedule, as always. She'd arrived Christmas Eve and immediately began rearranging Clarice's decorations to meet her standards. Nathan watched his children open gifts with the polite enthusiasm that had replaced genuine excitement somewhere around their 10th birthdays. Mom, thank you, Jocelyn said, holding up an expensive handbag that looked exactly like the one Clarice carried. It's perfect. I thought you were old enough for a grown-up purse, Greta said. Something appropriate for when you start applying to colleges. Levi opened a box containing a new tennis racket, even though he'd told Nathan privately that he wanted to quit tennis and try out for the school jazz band instead. This is great, Grandma. Thank you. Nathan's gifts came last. For Jocelyn, he made a jewelry box with her initials carved into the lid and compartments lined with velvet. She opened it carefully, running her fingers over the smooth wood. Dad, this is beautiful. You made this. Every piece. It must have taken forever. Worth every minute. For Levi, he brought out the guitar rack, wrapped in brown paper with a simple red bow. His son's eyes widened when he saw it. "Dad, this is—" Levi lifted it carefully, examining the joinery and finish. "This is incredible. Look at this detail." Clarice glanced up from her phone, where she'd been scrolling through other families' Christmas photos. "That's cute. We'll find a place for it. Maybe in the garage." The words landed like a slap. Nathan watched Levi's face fall, saw the moment his son learned that something made with love and skill could be dismissed as cute and banished to the garage like junk. "It's not going in the garage," Nathan said quietly. "Well, we can't put it in the living room," Clarice said. "It doesn't match anything. It matches Levi. He plays guitar. He needs a place to keep his instruments." Greta made a sound that might have been a laugh. "Nathan, really? It's very rustic." But Clarice is right about the decor. Nathan looked around the room at the designer furniture, the professional decorations, the carefully curated perfection that had slowly squeezed out anything personal or meaningful. When had their home become a showroom? "Maybe we could put it in Levi's room," Jocelyn suggested, clearly trying to keep peace. "That's better," Clarice said. "More appropriate." Nathan watched his son carry the guitar rack upstairs, shoulders slumped with the weight of his father's failed gesture. The rest of Christmas morning passed in a blur of thank yous and photo sessions, everyone smiling for pictures that would later prove what a perfect family Christmas they'd had. That evening, Clarice threw her annual Christmas party. Nathan had learned to hate these events, 3 hours of Clarice showing off their house to people who barely acknowledged his existence. He usually found reasons to stay busy in the kitchen or outside, avoiding the small conversations where he was introduced as Clarice's husband and then politely ignored. But this year felt different. Maybe he was watching Levi's gift get dismissed, or maybe it was 6 months of building something with his own hands that actually mattered to him. Whatever the reason, Nathan found himself standing in his own living room like a stranger at his own party. "Nathan," Mrs. Patterson swept over with her usual overwhelming enthusiasm. "How lovely to see you. Clarice tells me you're still doing that metalwork thing." "I am." "Well, good for you. Everyone needs a hobby." Hobby. 20 years of skilled work, a business that supported his family, reduced to a hobby by someone who'd never worked a day in her life. "Actually, it's my career," Nathan said. "Has been for 2 decades. Mrs. Patterson's smile flickered. "Of course. Well, I'm sure it's very fulfilling." She moved away quickly, and Nathan realized that somewhere along the way, he'd become the uncomfortable presence at his own party. The blue-collar husband who reminded everyone that Clarice hadn't married into money. She'd married down to someone who worked with his hands. Later, as the party wound down, Nathan was clearing glasses when he overheard Greta talking to Jocelyn in the kitchen. "You're such a beautiful young woman," Greta said. "So much potential. Just remember what I always tell your mother, don't marry down, sweetie, or you'll never move up." Nathan froze in the doorway, holding a tray of empty wine glasses. Jocelyn glanced over and saw him there, her face flushing red. "Grandma, I'm just saying, look around this room. See how well your mother has done for herself? That takes planning. It takes smart choices about who you let into your life." Nathan set the tray down carefully and walked outside. The December air was cold enough to burn his lungs, but he needed it. Needed something real and clean after breathing the poison that had been filling his house for years. Don't marry down. The same words Greta had used on their wedding day, now being passed to his daughter like some kind of inheritance. The message was clear. Nathan was the cautionary tale, the mistake Jocelyn should avoid making. He thought about the guitar rack, beautiful and useless in Levi's room. He thought about the lodge taking shape at Lake Juniper, built with his own hands and his own vision. He thought about the 20 years he'd spent apologizing for who he was instead of demanding respect for what he'd accomplished. When he went back inside, the last guests were leaving. Clarice was already loading the dishwasher, moving through her post-party routine with practiced efficiency. "Good party," Nathan said. "I think so." Mrs. Patterson loved the new curtains. "Great." Clarice studied him. "You were quiet tonight." "Was I? You barely talked to anyone." Nathan considered his words carefully. Hard to talk to people who think you're their maid. What's that supposed to mean? Nothing. Forget it. But he wouldn't forget. Not anymore. Nathan filed the papers on a Tuesday morning in January, driving to the courthouse during what should have been his lunch break. The clerk was a middle-aged woman with kind eyes who looked like she'd processed 1,000 broken marriages. Grounds for divorce? She asked. Irreconcilable differences. Children involved? 2. Ages 16 and 14. Custody preference. Nathan had thought about this question for weeks. Joint custody. 50-50 time split. Property to be divided? We'll work that out. He paid the filing fee and walked back to his truck with a manila envelope containing copies of the papers that would end his marriage. 20 years reduced to legal documents and checkbox options. But instead of grief, he felt something that might have been relief that he waited until evening to serve the papers. Clarice was in the living room watching one of her home improvement shows, a glass of wine at her elbow and her laptop open to Pinterest. Greta had gone back to her own apartment after New Year's, but her presence lingered in the careful arrangement of throw pillows and the magazine-perfect staging of every surface. Clarice. She looked up, smiling the distracted smile she used when she wanted him to know she was busy with something more important. I need you to look at something. He handed her the envelope. She opened it without urgency, probably expecting insurance papers or tax documents. Nathan watched her face change as she read, confusion shifting to shock to anger. What is this? Divorce papers. I can see that. Her voice was rising. What I'm asking is why my husband is handing me divorce papers on a Tuesday night, like we're discussing the electric bill. Because if I'm not good enough to vacation with, I'm not good enough to be married to. What? She stood up so fast her wine glass tipped over, staining the white couch cushion dark red. This is about the beach trip. This is about 20 years of beach trips. 20 years of Christmas parties where I'm the help. 20 years of you being embarrassed that you married someone who works with his hands. Nathan, you're being ridiculous. I'm not embarrassed. Your mother told our daughter not to marry down like you did. In our kitchen, at our Christmas party. Clarice went very still. She was just what? Just giving Jocelyn good advice? Just warning her not to make your mistake. Nathan, please. Sit down. Let's talk about this. We're talking about it. I'm talking about it. You're making excuses for it. The front door opened and Greta walked in, carrying a casserole dish and talking before she saw them. Clarice, I brought that chicken recipe you owe. She took in the scene the spilled wine, the papers scattered on the coffee table, her daughter's stricken face. What's going on here? Nathan's lost his mind, Clarice said. He wants a divorce. Greta set down the casserole and crossed her arms. Nathan, what's this about? It's about being done. Done with what? Done with you. Done with being treated like I'm lucky to be included in my own family. Done with watching my kids learn to be ashamed of their father. You can't just leave, Greta said, her voice sharp with authority. You have children. You have responsibilities. You owe her. I owe them a man who won't get stepped on. Nathan picked up his keys from the kitchen counter. I'll be staying at the lodge until this gets sorted out. Clarice, have your lawyer call mine. Nathan, wait. Clarice followed him toward the door. We can work this out. We can go to counseling. We can't do anything. You can figure out how to explain this to your mother and your friends and whoever else matters more than I do. He was in his truck before she could respond, pulling out of the driveway as she stood in the doorway with the light behind her, looking smaller than he'd seen her in years. The drive to Lake Juniper took 20 minutes through dark country roads. The first cabin was finished enough to live in running water, heat, a bed Nathan had moved in for the nights when he worked too late to drive home. But tonight it felt less like a temporary refuge and more like the first night of the rest of his life. He called Frankie from the deck overlooking the lake. I filed for divorce today. How do you feel? Nathan considered the question, watching moonlight shimmer on the water. Like I should have done this a long time ago. Clarice, take it well. About like you'd expect. Greta was there. Oh hell, that woman's going to make this ugly, isn't she? Probably. But Nathan, this is the right call. I've watched you disappear a little more every year. Maybe now you can figure out who you are when you're not apologizing for it. After they hung up, Nathan sat in the quiet for a long time. No television, No voices telling him what he should want or who he should be. Just the sound of water lapping against the dock and the possibility of something better. Scene 4. The courtroom. The custody hearing was scheduled for a Thursday morning in March. Nathan arrived early, wearing his best suit and carrying a folder of documents his lawyer had insisted he bring. He'd expected Clarice to be there with her mother and her attorney, but he wasn't prepared for the small army that entered the courtroom behind them. Mrs. Patterson, 3 other country club women, Clarice's tennis instructor, even the principal from Jocelyn's school. Character witnesses, his lawyer explained quietly. People who would testify about what kind of mother Clarice was and what kind of father Nathan wasn't. Mr. Kellier, Judge Martinez said when Nathan's turn came to speak. You're requesting 50-50 custody of both children. Yes, Your Honor. Can you provide adequate housing? Nathan's lawyer presented photos of the Lake Juniper property, the completed first cabin, plans for the main lodge, the pristine setting where his children could spend their summers. Mr. Kellier has invested significantly in a family resort business, his lawyer explained. The children would have access to outdoor activities, structured learning opportunities, and quality time with their father. Clarice's attorney painted a different picture. Nathan was impulsive, irresponsible, abandoning his family for a risky business venture that would probably fail. The children needed stability, not upheaval. Mrs. Kellier provides a structured, nurturing environment, the attorney said. Private school, extracurricular activities, social connections that will benefit the children as they prepare for college and adult life. Then Greta took the stand. I've watched Nathan for 20 years, she said, her voice carrying the authority of someone used to being believed. He's not a bad man, but he's never understood what it means to put family first. This divorce, this business venture, it's all about what Nathan wants, not what's best for Jocelyn and Levi. Can you elaborate? He's teaching them that when things get difficult, you run away, that you abandon your responsibilities for some fantasy about a different life. Nathan's lawyer objected, but the damage was done. Greta had painted him as the selfish parent, the one who put his own desires above his children's needs. When the hearing broke for lunch, Nathan sat alone on a bench outside the courthouse. His phone buzzed with a text from Reese. How's it going? He was typing a response when someone sat down beside him. Jocelyn, wearing a dress he'd never seen before and looking older than her 16 years. Dad, hey, sweetheart. You okay? I wanted to tell you something. Nathan waited, watching his daughter struggle with words. What Grandma said in there? About you running away? That's not true. Jocelyn, no, let me say this. I've been watching you for months, and you're not running away from us. You're running towards something that makes you happy. Nathan felt his throat tighten. It's more complicated than that. Is it? Because from where I sit, you built something beautiful that you're proud of, and Mom and Grandma act like that's somehow wrong. She paused. I want to spend summers with you, Dad. At the lodge. Levi does too. Did you tell the judge that? I'm about to. When court reconvened, Judge Martinez called both children to chambers for private interviews. Nathan waited, trying not to hope too hard. 20 minutes later, they returned. Jocelyn walked straight to Greta, who was sitting in the front row behind Clarice. Grandma, Jocelyn said, her young voice carrying clearly through the courtroom. Don't talk about my dad like he's not raising us. The silence that followed was deafening. Greta's face went white, then red, then settled into a tight mask of control. Jocelyn, this isn't the place. This is exactly the place. You just told the judge that Dad doesn't put family first. But he's the one who teaches me things. He's the one who listens when I talk. He's the one who builds beautiful things with his hands because he wants to share them with us. Judge Martinez waited for order, then delivered his ruling. Joint custody, 50-50 time split. The children could choose which parent to spend summers with, starting this year. Outside the courthouse, Clarice was crying into her phone while Greta stood beside her like a stone statue. Nathan approached carefully. Clarice. She looked up, mascara streaked down her cheeks. Are you happy now? I'm not happy about any of this, but I'm glad the kids get to choose. You turned them against me. I didn't turn them against anything. I just stopped disappearing. He walked to his truck where Jocelyn and Levi were waiting. They'd chosen to ride with him, at least for today. "You guys okay?" "We're good, Dad," Levi said quietly. "We're good." Act 2, End ACT 3. The Vincenzo Scene 1. Invitations go out. The invitations were Nathan's idea, designed on heavy cardstock and printed at the local shop where he'd had business cards made for 20 years. Elegant, but not pretentious, with a photo of the completed main lodge reflected in the still water of Lake Juniper. "You're cordially invited to the inaugural Summer at Hollow Pine Retreat," they read. A celebration of family, craftsmanship, and the simple pleasure of time well spent. Nathan addressed them by hand on a Saturday morning in May, sitting at the kitchen island of the lodge's main building. The guest list had grown organically: his sister's family from Tennessee, Frankie's extended relatives, Reese and his kids, the couple who'd sold them the land, even his high school shop teacher who'd first taught him to work with his hands. Notably absent from the list, Clarice and Greta. "You sure about this?" Frankie asked, reviewing the names. "Leaving them out completely?" Nathan sealed another envelope. "I'm not leaving them out. They left themselves out a long time ago. Clarice is going to hear about this. Probably." The first guests arrived on a Friday afternoon in mid-June. Nathan watched from the lodge's main deck as cars wound down the gravel road, kids pressing their faces to windows as they caught their first glimpse of the lake. Jocelyn and Levi had been there for a week already, helping with final preparations and settling into the rhythm of a place that belonged to them. "Dad, the Hendersons are here," Jocelyn called. She'd grown 3 inches in the past year and lost the awkward uncertainty of early adolescence. Working at the lodge had given her confidence, a sense of purpose beyond grades and social approval. Nathan greeted his guests like the host he'd never been allowed to be. No performance, no anxiety about measuring up to someone else's standards. Just genuine welcome for people who'd chosen to spend their time in a place he'd built with his own hands. Reese arrived with his 2 teenagers and his new girlfriend, a teacher from Asheville who brought homemade cookies and immediately started organizing a game for the younger kids. Frankie's family took over one of the cabins, Maribel setting up her outdoor kitchen equipment like she was planning to feed everyone for a week WY evening. The lodge was full of the kind of noise Nathan had forgotten existed: multiple conversations, children's laughter, the sound of people who actually enjoyed each other's company. They grilled fish Levi had caught that morning, ate Maribel's famous salsa, and watched the sunset paint the lake in shades of gold and purple. "This is what you were building toward," Maribel said, finding Nathan on the dock after dinner. "Not just the buildings, but this feeling." "What feeling?" "Like everyone belongs here. Like there's room for all of us." Nathan looked back at the lodge where Jocelyn was teaching his sister's kids to play guitar while Levi helped Frankie set up a fire in the stone pit they'd built for stargazing. "There is room," he said. Finally, Nathan's phone buzzed on a Tuesday morning during the second week of guests. A string of missed calls from Clarice, followed by increasingly frantic text messages. "Call me. Nathan, we need to talk. This is important. Answer your phone." He was replacing a deck board when she finally showed up in person, her BMW looking out of place on the gravel road. She climbed out wearing white jeans and heels completely inappropriate for lakefront property, her face set in the determined expression he'd learned to dread. "Hello, Clarice." "Don't hello Clarice me. What the hell is this place?" Nathan set down his hammer and stood. "This is Hollow Pine Retreat. I sent you the business plan last year. You sent me papers to sign. I didn't know you were building some kind of resort empire while refusing to pay adequate child support. Our child support is exactly what the court ordered. That's not the point." She gestured toward the lodge where voices and laughter drifted from the main dining room. "You cut me out. Completely. Why wasn't I invited?" Nathan considered several responses, none of them kind. "Why would you want to be invited to something I built?" "Because I'm your wife. Ex-wife. Because I'm the mother of your children." "Yes, you are. And they're here, having the summer I always wanted to give them." Clarice walked toward the lodge like she was conducting an inspection. Nathan followed, curious to see her reaction to what he'd accomplished. The main building was full of afternoon activity. Jocelyn was leading an art workshop for the younger kids, while Levi helped Reese's son repair a fishing rod. Maribel was teaching Frankie's nieces to make corn tortillas from scratch, flour covering every surface of the open kitchen. "It's very rustic," Clarice said finally. "It's real." "I'm not sure what you mean by that." Nathan watched his daughter help a 7-year-old mix paint colors, patient and encouraging in a way that reminded him of himself at his best. "I mean, no one here has to pretend to be someone else to fit in." "Nathan, I saw the Instagram posts. You're all over social media with this place. My friends are asking me why I wasn't included in my own family's vacation." "This isn't a vacation. This is home." Clarice turned to face him, and for a moment he saw something that might have been genuine hurt in her eyes. "You really hate me, don't you?" "I don't hate you, Clarice. I just don't trust you anymore." "What's that supposed to mean?" "It means you had 20 years to decide I was worth including, and you chose not to. So I stopped waiting for you to change your mind." "Nathan, that's not fair. I was building something too. I was trying to give our family status, connections, opportunities. You were trying to erase me." The words hung between them like a challenge. Clarice opened her mouth to argue, then seemed to realize there was no argument that would work. "So this is it? You just get to start over, and I get to explain to everyone why my ex-husband has become some kind of success story without me. You get to figure out who you are when you're not apologizing for who you married." Nathan's phone buzzed with a text from Jocelyn. "Mom here." He typed back, "On the deck. Everything okay?" "Fine." Clarice had moved to the railing, staring out at the lake where several kayaks were making their way toward the far shore. "The kids seem happy," she said finally. "They are. Jocelyn posted a picture yesterday. She looked different. Older. She's growing up. She barely answers my calls anymore." Nathan felt a flicker of something that might have been sympathy, but it passed quickly. "Maybe call when you have something to say besides criticism." Clarice turned on him then, the hurt replaced by familiar anger. "You're cruel, Nathan. You know that. You're cruel and vindictive, and you're using our children to punish me." "I'm not using anyone for anything. I'm just finally building something that includes me." "What about what includes me?" "I spent 20 years trying to figure that out." Turns out the answer was nothing. She left without saying goodbye to the kids, her car kicking up dust as she drove away too fast. Nathan watched until she disappeared around the bend, then went back to work on the deck. Levi appeared beside him 10 minutes later. "Was that Mom?" "Yeah." "She didn't come say hi. She was upset." "About what?" Nathan considered how much truth a 14-year-old could handle. "About not being invited." "Oh." Levi picked up a spare hammer and knelt beside Nathan. "Why didn't you invite her?" "Because this place isn't about proving anything to anyone. It's about being who we are. And Mom doesn't like who we are. Your mom likes who she thinks we should be." They worked in companionable silence for a while, father and son rebuilding something together. The investor arrived on a Thursday morning in July, driving a Tesla that looked like it belonged in a different century than the gravel roads of Lake Juniper. Robert Chun was younger than Nathan had expected, probably early 30s, wearing jeans and a polo shirt that managed to look both casual and expensive. "Mr. Kellio, I'm Robert Chun, Pinnacle Development. Thank you for agreeing to meet with me." Nathan shook his hand, noting the firm grip and direct eye contact. Not what he'd expected from a Charlotte real estate developer. "What can I do for you?" "I'd like to talk about Hollow Pine. Mind if we walk the property?" They started at the main lodge, where Chin took photos and made notes on an expensive tablet. He asked technical questions about occupancy rates, revenue projections, expansion possibilities. But he also asked about the design philosophy, the guest experience, the reason people chose to come back. "This is quality work," he said, running his hand along the stone fireplace Nathan had built by hand. "Everything custom. Most of it. I do the metalwork. Frankie handles the kitchen design. Reese did the electrical. We used local suppliers for everything we could. It shows. There's an authenticity here that you can't fake." They walked to the lakefront where the 3 guest cabins sat among the trees, each one slightly different, but unified by the same attention to detail. "Full occupancy?" Chin asked. "Through September. Bookings are already coming in for next summer." "What about winter?" "We close November through March. Gives us time for maintenance and planning." Chin nodded, making more notes. "Mr. Kellyer, I'm going to be direct with you. Pinnacle is looking to invest in authentic hospitality experiences. Places like this, built by people who actually care about the guest experience. Investment how? We'd like to buy expansion rights to the property, not the existing buildings or operations those stay under your control. But we'd handle permits, financing, and construction for additional cabins and amenities. Nathan felt his stomach tighten. What kind of amenities? Nothing that would change the character of the place. Maybe a spa building, conference facilities for corporate retreats, additional dining options. We're talking about taking this from a 20-guest capacity to maybe 60 or 70. That's not the same place. No, it's not. It's a place that could support 20 full-time jobs instead of 5 seasonal ones. A place that could become a destination instead of just a getaway. They reached the dock where Jocelyn was teaching a guest's daughter to tie fishing knots. She looked up and waved, her face bright with the kind of happiness Nathan had been trying to give her for years. "What will my role be?" Nathan asked. "Managing partner. You'd maintain creative control over the guest experience, design standards, all the things that make this place special. We'd handle the business side marketing, expansion, corporate partnerships. And ownership. We'd want majority ownership of the expansion, but you'd remain full owner of the existing operation. Plus, you'd receive equity in a larger development." Nathan watched his daughter help the little girl cast her line into the calm water. A year ago, Jocelyn had been embarrassed to tell her friends where her father worked. Now she was teaching children skills that might matter more than anything they'd learn in school. "I need to think about it." "Of course. But Mr. Kellier, opportunities like this don't come around often. Pinnacle could make Hollow Pine into something truly special. It already is something special." Chin smiled. "Exactly. We want to help more people discover that." After Chin left, Nathan called Frankie and Reese to the lodge for an emergency meeting. They sat around the kitchen island where Nathan had first sketched his expansion plans, the same place he'd addressed invitations to people who'd actually wanted to be here. 7 figures, Frankie said after Nathan explained the offer. "That's life-changing money. It's also life-changing development," Reese pointed out. 60 guests instead of 20 changes everything about this place. "Not necessarily," Nathan said. "Chin seemed to understand what we've built here. Developers always say that. Then they bring in consultants who know better than you do about your own business." Nathan looked out at the lake where evening was beginning to settle. 2 families were sharing the fire pit, their children catching fireflies while the adults talked and laughed. Simple, real, exactly what he'd imagined when he first drew the blueprints. What if we could scale up without selling out? How? Chin said I'd maintain creative control. What if that actually means something? What if it doesn't? Nathan considered this. Then I walk away with enough money to build something else somewhere else. And leave this. There are other lakes. But even as he said it, Nathan knew he didn't want other lakes. He wanted this one, with its particular light and its specific trees and its accumulated memories of summers when his children had finally had room to be themselves. He called Chun the next morning. "I'm interested, but I have conditions. I'm listening. I maintain final approval over all design decisions. Any expansion has to meet the same quality standards as the existing buildings. And I want a clause that lets me buy back majority ownership if I ever want to. The buyback clause is unusual. This place matters to me in ways that aren't about money." "I understand. Let me talk to my partners and get back to you." Chin called back 2 hours later. "We have a deal." The renovation and expansion took 18 months. Nathan insisted on doing most of the work during the off-season, unwilling to disrupt the guest experience that had made Hollow Pine special in the first place. The new spa building was designed to look like it had always been there, built into the hillside with stone and timber that matched the original lodge. The conference center sat back from the lake, connected by a covered walkway lined with Jocelyn's artwork that be why the second summer after the sale, Hollow Pine was booked solid through the following year. Food Network had featured Frankie's outdoor cooking classes. Southern Living had done a spread on authentic family resorts. But the thing Nathan was proudest of was that guests still came back, still brought their children, still left looking like they'd remembered something important about being together. Clarice had tried several times to renegotiate custody and child support, citing Nathan's improved financial situation. The court had dismissed her petitions each time, noting that both children were thriving and that Nathan's success didn't change the original custody agreement. Besides, Judge Martinez had said during the last hearing, the children are 17 and 15 now. They're old enough to decide where they want to spend their time. Both kids had chosen Nathan. Now, on a Saturday morning in August, Nathan stood on the deck of the main lodge watching the controlled chaos of a full resort in summer swing. Jocelyn was leading a pottery workshop for teenagers while Levi taught younger kids basic guitar chords. Maribel's cooking classes were full, as always. Reese's son was guiding a nature walk through the trails Nathan had cleared by hand 3 years earlier. His phone buzzed with a text from Clarice. Saw the article in Charlotte magazine. Congratulations. He typed back, thanks. She sent another message. Maybe we could have dinner sometime. To talk. Nathan looked at the text for a long moment, then deleted it without responding. Some conversations were finished, even when one person didn't realize it yet. Dad. Jocelyn appeared beside him, paint-stained and grinning. The kids from the Morrison family want to set up an art show for their parents. Can we use the conference room? Of course. And Levi's planning a talent show for tonight. Kids and adults. You should play guitar. I don't perform. You're always performing. This is just being honest about it. Nathan watched his daughter bounce back toward her workshop, 17 years old and confident in ways that had nothing to do with other people's approval. She'd been accepted to 3 colleges, but was taking a gap year to help run the retreat's education programs. Real-world experience, she called it. Levi appeared a few minutes later, carrying his guitar case and looking like a younger version of Nathan's same dark hair, same steady hands, same quiet intensity when he was thinking through a problem. Dad, you got a minute? Always. They walked to the end of the dock where they could talk without interruption. Levi set down his guitar and sat with his feet in the water. I've been thinking about college. Yeah. I want to study business. Maybe hospitality management. Learn how to run places like this. Nathan felt something warm settle in his chest. That's a good feel. I want to learn from you too, though. The building part, the design part. How to make things that last. We can do that. They sat in comfortable silence, watching kayakers make their way across the lake. Nathan thought about the blueprint he'd drawn 5 years ago, alone in his shop while his family vacationed without him. He'd imagined this place, but he'd never imagined this moment his son choosing to build something alongside him. Dad, thank you. For what? For not giving up. For building this. For showing us that we didn't have to be ashamed of who we are. Nathan looked back at the lodge where the sound of laughter and conversation drifted across the water. Frankie was setting up for the evening barbecue while Reese helped guests launch paddleboards. Families who'd found their way to this place because they wanted what Nathan had always wanted, time together without apology. I didn't build this for me, Nathan said finally. I built it because there was no room for us anywhere else. There is now. Yeah, there is now. That evening, the talent show filled the main lodge with music and laughter. Levi played guitar while Jocelyn sang harmony, their voices blending in ways that reminded Nathan of Clarice when she was young and still believed that love could bridge any gap. But these were his children's voices, carrying forward something better than what they'd inherited. Nathan didn't perform, but he watched in the kitchen doorway as his kids shared the gift he'd given them, the confidence to be themselves without asking permission. Later, after the guests had drifted back to their cabins and the dishes were washed, Nathan walked the property alone. The spa building glowed softly in the darkness, designed to complement rather than compete with the natural setting. The conference center sat quietly in the trees, waiting for Monday's corporate retreat that would fund another year of improvements. He stopped at the original cabin, the first one he'd built with Frankie and Reese during those long evenings when the future was just possibility and hope. A small sign by the door read, "Builder's Cabin," though Nathan had never thought of himself as a builder until he'd started building things that mattered. His phone buzzed with a text from Frankie. "Good day. Perfect day. See you tomorrow for the breakfast prep. Wouldn't miss it." Nathan walked back toward the lodge where a light was still on in the office. Jocelyn was probably updating the social media accounts, posting pictures that would bring more families to this place he'd built because there was no room for them anywhere else. The wooden sign by the front entrance was barely visible in the darkness, but Nathan knew what it said. Levi had carved it last Christmas, working in Nathan's shop with the same careful attention Nathan brought to his finest metalwork. Hollow Pine Retreat, no room for cowards. And underneath, in smaller letters, dedicated to those who made room for themselves. Nathan smiled and walked inside. Tomorrow would bring new guests, new challenges, new opportunities to prove that there was room for everyone willing to earn their place. But tonight, for the first time in 20 years, Nathan Kellier was exactly where he belonged.